Welcome back to the Self-Esteem and Confidence Mindset podcast with me, Johnny Pardo. Today, I have my friend James on the podcast with us. Welcome, James.
I appreciate you putting me on here, man. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you on as well. So I know we've sort of been talking about potentially collaborating. So it's great that you can come here today and we can hear the immense amount of value that I know you've got and that I regularly see. So thanks for coming on, James. Appreciate you.
I,
So a quick introduction to James. So then James can say a little bit more about what he does and himself. So James is a mindset coach, and I met him in one of my coaching communities. He's a fellow coach like myself in a similar sort of space. James actually began his personal growth journey at 17, and he's actually now 18. So James has been really working on his growth and now inspires other people to do the same and really helps them get the best out of themselves, which is very inspirational. I certainly wasn't in that space when I was 17 or 18 years old. So, James, I've obviously said a little bit about you, and I'm really pleased you're here with us. So, could you tell us a little bit more about yourself and what got you into what you're doing right now?
yeah, absolutely. And I think that's something that a lot of people say is like they wish they started when they were my age and all that kind of stuff. But I really feel like I'm a advocate of starting whenever. Like the best time to plant a tree is 200 years ago, but the best time to start is now.
Hmm.
Second best time is now. So I think it's important to recognize that. But really what got me into personal growth, I started listening to the person that we were in the same community in, Rob Dial. And man, it just kind of shifted my mindset towards creating a better mindset. For a long time throughout my life, I had felt like I had no control over the feelings that I felt, the actions that I would take, and really the results I would get in life. And that kind of put me down a survival path of experiencing life, feeling like it was happening to me rather than for me. And you'll probably hear me say that a lot throughout this podcast because I think it's a really big perspective shift. And I think that's what we're all looking for, is a big perspective shift because our reality is based on it. So that was a huge shift for me. And really recognizing that the more that I invest into myself, the more that I focus on growth instead of trying to reach a goal, this journey is never going to end. So I think just focusing on that was a huge point for me.
Yeah, love it, love it. And I love what you said about life happening for you rather than to you. It's a common thing I hear often in the Tony Robbins world as well. That I think I don't know if I originally heard it there, but it's probably where it originates from. But yeah, it's definitely a great perspective shift because if you can see that even in the toughest times, and we've all got different situations, right? We've all gone through different things, and we're not here to compare with each other's circumstances, but if you can see that in the toughest times, it's going to put you in an even better spot in the easier days, I guess, as well, when you're a bit more free to enjoy life as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And to even touch a little bit more on that, the reason I think it was such a huge perspective shift for me was growing up, I lost a lot of family members. My
Mm.
my dad passed away when I was 6. My uncle passed away a few years after that, and then my grandfather passed away a few years after that. So it was like the three most important men in my life all died within the span of about 5 years. So I kind of grew up with no father figure, no guy in my life that really made me feel, I guess, seen. Maybe is the word I can use. So that kind of made me feel like I had no control. And on
Mm.
top of that, a big part of my life was baseball. I played baseball throughout my whole life. It seemed as every year I was going out, I worked. I'm a guy that goes, if I'm going into something, I'm going all in on it. Just like this coaching thing, podcast, and all of it, I'm going in all in on it. And so I went all in on baseball. I'd work out, I would practice. I'd be the first one there. I'd be the last one to leave. That kind of put a lot of tension on my body, and I ended up getting injured. I injured my shoulder. I injured my wrist, been through the hospital, been through surgeries too many times. So it was just like thing after thing just felt like it was piling on top of me. And I feel in life that we all have those kind of moments, whether we can't pay rent, maybe something happens with a family member, something happens with a loved one. We always feel like life is happening to us. But if we can just shift our perspective instead of being the victim and start taking control, that's when things start to shift.
Yeah, and And I like what you said about choosing not to feel the victim. Um, and you know, I've definitely been there, and it's like, oh, all these things are happening, and you know, while sometimes we do need that time to reflect and say, oh, you know, I'm struggling right now, life's difficult. We're not saying dismiss that, you know, you've got to acknowledge those feelings, and I have to pull myself up for sometimes too much masculine drive to go through things. You know, we need to do that, but you know, there's a point where we do need to actually look at what we can do and what we're in control of. And you know, I've heard sometimes people argue, oh, you know, well, it's not like this for you, and you know, my life's a lot harder. And my question is, the really, you know, to the point question is it doing you any favors thinking in that way? So I love the way you're thinking about life, like life's happening for you. And even, you know, when you've got setbacks, and, you know, very sorry to hear about obviously those early events in your life as well. But actually you're coming out of this being an example to others, which is the fantastic way to kind of look at it. So one thing I kind of am very keen on is the power of questions and quality questions. Do you find that something that's been useful in your life to ask those quality questions?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's definitely, I love that you brought that up because that's something I was even focusing on with my client this morning. It's something that really is the the quality of our questions directs our focus. And if we're focused on being a victim, if we're focused on all the things that are going wrong, we're not looking for a solution. We're only focused on problems. So if we can ask better questions and we can direct our focus to a better solution, maybe a different direction, we can find answers. But it's not going to happen from, you know, asking the same questions that we've been asking. So yeah, absolutely. It's a daily thing for me. I take time to reflect on it every day. I think the questions are one of the most important things that we can do for ourselves, for sure.
Mm. Yeah, no, that's great. And you've been using that of other people as well. I think it was Peter Sage. I've heard it in different people's versions, but Peter Sage, well, actually, he's been a guest on this podcast as well. But he says questions are the steering wheel of the mind in the way that
Yeah,
we focus it. I love the way he said that one. So yeah, no, that's great. You have questions in those ways. So another thing that kind of could really shape us in terms of how we feel is our daily rituals. And is this, or kind of what we're doing day in, day out, our habits or rituals, whatever you like to call it. Do you find this is something that's been powerful for both yourself or perhaps people you've coached as well? The power of daily habits.
absolutely. And I think that's a great question, first thing. And I think really making it daily is a huge point to touch on, because I think even if we're the slightest bit inconsistent, it can make a drastic change in our lives. For me, the first thing I do every single morning is meditate, and after I meditate, I read and get into my day, et cetera, et cetera. But I think without meditating every single morning, there's a disconnect between me and my inner self and the authentic self that I want to show up as every day. And I think even sometimes, like whether that's going to the gym or doing things, it can feel very strenuous getting into it, the start of it. But I think recognizing that showing up for yourself is like doing something you don't want to do to get something that you do want is worth the risk, and it's worth the strenuous kind of pullback of getting started. But they've been absolutely, you know, James Clear was a Atomic Habits. I think we all
Love
know
it.
what the
Love
book
it.
is.
Love that
It's an
book.
amazing,
One of my
book. And
favorites.
one of his quotes from it, and that truly I live by, is that first we make our habits, and then our habits make us.
Ooh.
And you are what you do every single day. And I think really when you show up for yourself, even when you don't feel like it, it kind of takes a vote for the person that you really do want to show up as.
Yeah, yeah. I'm so glad that we're both fans of that book as well. It's I think it's that one, and willpower doesn't work. Are you holding it up for the list? If you're listening to this, um, yeah, Atomic Habits by James Clear. If, not come across that book, highly recommend it. It's it's not the smallest book in the world, but it's not the biggest book in the world, but it's definitely worth, it's the audio book's available as well. So, and I'm not a affiliate for Atomic Habits. I'm just sharing my passion for it, as James was as well. But yeah, it's all about kind of, your habits form you. And what I like about the book is making things easy. Sometimes I think our brain never likes anything complicated, right? So yeah, I like how the book kind of describes to make things, even the 2-minute rule. I don't know if you remember, James, about the client James Clear had from actually showing up to the gym for 5 minutes in the book.
Yeah, that's something I made a podcast on that yesterday. It was like 3 ways to gain more discipline. And one of them was just to just to show up. Like just to show up, even if it's 5 minutes, but just like making that a habit of showing up, and day after day. If you promise yourself you're only going to show up for 5 minutes to the gym, you're going to end up wanting to stay longer. It's just going to become easier for you.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think one thing I heard from Tony was our brain goes 1, 2, 3, many as well. So kind of making lists smaller as much as possible as well. So yeah, that's another thing with the 5 minutes. So yeah, I'm glad you touched on those in your podcast as well. So and kind of the other book I'm kind of keen on is Willpower Doesn't Work, where you get like an environment to sort of serve you as much as possible. You get the systems in place, even if they're like easy, quick wins like that. And talking of environment, have you found anything about the quality of people you're hanging about impacts on how you feel?
Absolutely. And I think it's not that it's not touched on enough, but I truly feel that it is one of the core things in your life that can really make a shift in your life. If you we all know the quote, you are the 5 people you surround yourself most with, right? So it's like, when you really start surrounding yourself with people that are where you want to be, or you start surrounding yourself with people like you, Johnny, it can make a shift in your life, and it can really truly show you opportunities that you didn't see possible before, because you surround yourself with people that think differently, and they end up getting different results.
Yeah, definitely love that. In terms of that, because I'm quite a fan myself of being. I didn't used to see the world like this, but I'm quite a fan of being like the small fish basically now. Sometimes I feel like I really work on it, but then suddenly the growth's limited when you really get yourself to the top. And I'm happy to jump in the programs which are led by millionaires. Like I've got one that I jumped into, and I'm like, there's a lot of work here, but I'm growing. So yeah, I think you put your hand up there, James, as well. You're a fan of doing that approach as well. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important to. Like the more you get out of your comfort zone, the more comfortable you make it.
Yeah, definitely. And so yeah, a peer group makes a big difference who you're sort of like hanging out with, online and offline as well. So I know obviously we can't avoid negative people for the rest of our lives, or people who might not bring out the best of us, but the majority of the time is important to fill with good quality groups around you as much as possible. So it's great that you've jumped into, we both jumped into the whole communities we're in as well. So that definitely rises us up.
Yeah.
So in terms of the other thing that can kind of make, really impact your mind and how you feel about life, it's the information we take in. And is this something you found, perhaps maybe you made a shift in your life where perhaps you started listening to good quality information? You mentioned obviously listening to Rob's podcast or whatever. Do you find generally listening to good quality information has made a big difference in your life?
Enormous. And this is something I love to touch on. I really do. Because it's funny, because I hear so often from people that like, I'm not a reader, or I don't like reading. I'd rather like watch a movie than listen to a podcast or all this kind of stuff. But honestly, I'm obsessed. Truly, I got to be honest with you. Like, it's gotten to the point where I'm in the gym, and instead of listening to music, I'm listening to an audiobook. Yeah. And to double that, I listen to it on 2x. So a goal of mine to touch on, just it kind of as a basis of this, is I'm trying to reach 50 books this year. And it seems I'm very much past where I should be right now. So we'll see at the end of the year, but it's looking a lot more than 50. And it's I think when you surround yourself with like different, just like you said, the communities that you surround yourself with. I'm not one that has a lot of people around me in my environment that are on the same path as me. So when you can do it through books or podcasts or communities, I advise it times 100. If you can't invest in yourself, invest in the people you surround yourself with and the things that you listen to. Like our inputs are gonna direct our outputs. So I definitely make sure that my inputs are top tier where I want to be.
Yeah, I really like how you said, like, if you're not necessarily got like people around you who are in the same space, like, you know, we've got a great community online and stuff like that. And obviously I still like people to people interaction, whether whether or not like the necessarily into personal growth, although unfortunately I've got a couple of friends, you know, more local like that. But you know, that information you're listening to like a real influential, inspirational person on your going into your head every day, that's going to start playing an impact to you. So I always, you know, I always criticize the news on here, but I don't think you can criticize it enough. But like, you know, if you're listening to the news every day and that's going into your head, like all the, you know, the things that could go wrong with the world or things blown out of proportion, etc. And then that activates your fear-based mind is completely different as opposed to me who's listening to Tony Robbins on the go constantly. And I'm like, God, then I'll say something and be like, oh, that was quite good. And it's like, there's a reason I've said, you know, said something smart in the moment or taken a certain action. It's because the information is feeding me. So I'm glad you're also someone who goes to the gym and then they go, oh, I'm listening to audiobooks or, you know.
It's yeah, it's a lot different than a lot of people. That's for sure.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with listening to you know, music and stuff like that, but it's just the majority of the information. And I even started listening to music which is, be careful of the lyrics sometimes as well. Of you know, there's a song Unstoppable by Sia that just the lyrics are like, I'm unstoppable, I'm so confident. It's like, that's pretty good lyrics to keep going around in your head. So I know that's something I always advise, if you're looking for a power song, that is. But there's lots of them out there. But yeah, podcasts, audiobooks, you got lots and lots of information to listen to. So that's brilliant. So one thing, obviously, I'm very keen about having, you know, put a considerable amount of time, effort, and money into myself because I believe in growing myself to therefore contribute to other people and be the best version of me and help other people. I know you feel like the same, and we've talked about this. But what can you tell, you know, at the age of 18 years old, and I wouldn't have done this. What can you tell people about the power of investing into yourself?
You are your best investment.
Hmm.
And I think that statement alone says it all. Truly, if you don't invest in yourself, then are you really investing in the right things? I think I've always been one to save my money, because I think like I said, you are your best investment. So if you can invest in yourself to become a better version of yourself, to acquire skills that you didn't once have, to think a different way, to get different results, I think that's why we do what we do. We're coaches because we want to help speed up that process. We know what investing in ourselves has done for us. And I think instead of going to college and getting into debt for a long time, I thought it would be a lot better to spend money into myself so that I can show up as a better version of myself. And it was the best decision I ever made.
That's awesome. I love that. Love that attitude because I often think like, even when I've got like, had, you know, done loans and stuff like that before into like big business commitments and things like that, I've seen it personally, like, you know, people buy houses and stuff. And again, please don't misunderstand and think I'm saying don't buy houses. You know, it's great to get a home and stuff like that and a flat. And definitely it's a great investment in some respects. But if you're buying a home, you're paying, like a mortgage off every month. Now, I've got loans for my own personal growth and paid a period off over a certain amount of time. So, you can always get resourceful, but it's like, and I've also actually, the house is probably not as good an example as a car. I've had a car and I've been paying a finance plan, and that's, it's a nice car and it's an object, but the investment in myself and paying that off, that's irreplaceable, and you become more valuable in yourself therefore. So I'm glad you kind of got that spin of things where you are as well.
Yeah. And I think also is like you said in the beginning of this podcast, a lot of people wouldn't be doing what I'm doing at my age, what you would say. And I assume that most of the people listening to this podcast right now probably are older than 18. And so just something that, like, to even think about is, imagine going back to being 18 years old, but with all of the knowledge that you have at the age that you're at right now. Like, would you invest in yourself to have all that knowledge? And that's something I always think about every time that I'm going to invest in myself, because when you do that, it's kind of like it's like a cheat code investing in yourself in life, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Love the perspective you put on that sort of thing. Okay, great. So, investing is a key thing into yourself. So in terms of anything else, it's been a great conversation today, but is there anything else you would share with us that's really helped you along your journey in personal growth?
Yeah, I think a big topic for me, and I feel most people in personal growth, so if you're listening to this podcast, it'll probably resonate with you, but we're always looking for this destination, this place that we're going to end up at. And I even heard it on a live earlier today. A guy was talking about, reaching this place where, he's invested in himself, and he's just going to reach this place where everything's just exactly how he wants it to be. But I think if you keep placing this expectation on a place in the future, like this happiness, the peace, just this amazing place that you desire to be at, and you place it in the future, it's never going to be where you are. If you place it in the future, it never will be where you are. So I think really the biggest thing is, like, embrace right now, embrace the moment. I think a big impact for me, and I think a lot of people, the power of now has a huge impact, and just being able to be present in right now, something I've been able to definitely take on the perspective of how limited our time is by losing a lot of family members. I almost died when I was born. Really just being able to take on that perspective and truly be an example of it. Because I think we often recognize that we're going to die, our time's going to come, but we don't really live like it. So I think that's a huge perspective for me, for sure.
I'm so glad you brought that up, James, in terms of enjoying the journey along the way rather than this outcome, because the days can just pass you by very quickly. So I know I'm 31, so if you 31, kind of my 20s went very, very quickly. Had a really great, generally pretty good 20s, enjoyed. The early part, I was perhaps more probably most of it, I was quite the party guy, but it's still good fun. So, but actually your years go past quite quickly. So embrace the now. So I really like that message that you've shared with us today.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So thank you so much, James, for coming on today and some of the great insights you shared for how we can really develop a strong mindset, creating that resilience within it. So that's awesome. So if people want to find out more about you and your work, where's the best place they can find you, or places?
Yeah, absolutely. The best place to find me is probably on Instagram at James Bracken IV. You can look at my podcast, the You Can Too podcast, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the above. You can go on Facebook. I have a Facebook group as well. You can find me. I think the best place is really to find me on Instagram. DM me, shoot me a DM. Let's chat. Would love to chat with you. That's it, man. And check out the podcast. If you like Johnny's podcast, I think you would like mine as well.
Yeah, awesome. I'm sure sure it's going to have an amazing impact on many people's lives. So we'll be sure to link your podcast and your Instagram in the bio as well, or the description, I mean, of this episode, so people can find you. So once again, thank you for coming on today, James.
Thank you for having me, Johnny. I'm blessed to be here, man.
Awesome. So that concludes our episode for today. And remember, work on your self-confidence every single day.